Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a disassembly for you on this little guy right here. This is the CRKT Tuna. This is a knife that I've actually already taken apart. In fact, I already filmed the disassembly. Unfortunately, I lost that video due to very boring circumstances. This has been already taken apart, but nonetheless, I'll show you what we got going on here. One important thing that we got going on here are really bad T6 screws. I say really bad because the screws themselves, there's sort of your area with the engagement, so to speak. There's the area that the end of the bit actually goes into, but then sloping down into that, there's like this little cutout thing, which means that the actual amount of the screw in there that my Torx bit can engage with is remarkably small. And given that these guys have some pretty heavy thread lock, or at least did from the factory, this is just a pain in the neck. I am really not a big fan of these T6 screws here. They're very easy to strip out. They're very easy to have it break a tool. Whoa there, this has taken itself apart in record time. So what we have here is actually a very straightforward tool. There's really not too much going on here. What we have is a G10 scale. We have a steel frame lock scale on the back side here. We have a blade. We have some Teflon washers, and we have a pivot. I'm going to go ahead and clean this guy off using some rubbing alcohol. And if you're ever curious about any of the tools I'm using for my disassembly, go ahead and check out nickshabazz.com/tools. But nonetheless, I mean, what we see here is there ain't so much going on. There is an over-travel stop. That's something here. Got a little back spacer. Again, I mean, the really uncontroversial construction here, although one could argue that Teflon should be controversial, but they're doing it, so welcome. But yeah, so we see here nothing really so interesting. Must have forgotten to clean there at the first place, or maybe from carry. I don't know what I was cutting. Nonetheless, and we'll clean off the Teflon washers, and we're almost done here. This is a very simple knife to take apart. That's good, at least, right? I'll take every bit of that. Nonetheless, go ahead and clean this off. Now we will put in the pivot. The pivot, as you may or may not have noticed, is actually not free spinning, and that is by virtue of this little D-shaped face on the top of it there. And so we just want to make sure that as we put everything back together that we insert that D-shape with the proper orientation. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use some knife pivot lube here. Knife pivot lube tends to be a little bit better than nano oil for washer-based actions. So I'll drop that on there, drop on some washers there, the Teflon that is. Go ahead and put a little bit of lubrication onto there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little lubrication into the detent ball hole. This will allow the knife to gradually lubricate this detent ball path as you use it and carry it on a regular basis. It's a beautiful thing. Then finally I'm going to drop on a couple more drops of oil here and the washer. And then we put the whole thing back together, right? This is pretty straightforward. At some level, I appreciate the fact that the construction is pretty straightforward, even if the screws themselves were not so much. I'll go ahead and I'll put on the pivot first, and I'm going to use a little bit of blue thread locker here. Loctite Blue 242. And beautiful. I will pop that in there. And let's go ahead and take this little guy. You can see here some of the thread locker is kind of gunked up around the collar there. So let's just pop that off. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they really drowned this from the factory in thread lock. That's not great. Especially when you're using really bad screws. You know, I never thought I'd be at a point in my life where I have really strong opinions about fastener types, but here I am. And you can see here, these have like almost no engagement on the top of the screwdriver. I'm like having to hold them in place there because they chamfer them so damn much. I'm really not a big fan of this particular batch of screws. CRKT generally does better. It's probably just the case that they got this batch of screws super, like the factory got this batch of screws super cheap from somebody, and as a result, it was just like, yeah, sure, ship them. No one's gonna take it apart. Yeah. It's me. You're no one. But what we can see is that the construction was straightforward, and this was an easy process, right? Just tweaking the pivot here, making sure that we can't get any more, okay, yeah, no play. Yeah, beautiful. We are all good to go. So anyways, there you go. That was your disassembly and maintenance for your CRKT Tuna here. Hope this was interesting to you, that you enjoyed tuning into this video, and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.